Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The coffee was still warm. That was the thought that slipped into my mind as I poured the dark roast into her favorite mug, the white one with the tiny painted cactus on it. I had made it extra strong, the way Jasmine liked it, even though it tasted like bitter asphalt to me. I added a splash of oat milk, no sugar, and set it carefully on the counter next to her keys. It had become a small ritual, one of 100 little habits that had built the architecture of our life together, as familiar as the creak of the hallway floorboard or the hum of the old refrigerator in our Chicago apartment. 3 years. It had been 3 years since I met Jasmine at a friend's disastrous barbecue on the South Side, where we had bonded over the charred remains of a veggie burger that looked like it had lost a fight with the grill. She had laughed, this bright, warm laugh, and said, "If this is the main course, I am definitely stopping for tacos on the way home." I had replied, "If you wait, I will drive you, but I'm not responsible if you fall in love with my playlist." That was how it started. A ruined burger, a shared eye roll, a car ride with old soul music, and the quiet, ridiculous hope that maybe I had just met someone important. 3 years of learning the specific cadence of her laugh, the way it sped up when she was truly delighted and slowed down when she was patronizing someone without them realizing it. 3 years of listening to her soft humming when she was concentrating on a design project. 3 years of knowing that she absolutely needed a cup of coffee before she could form a coherent sentence in the morning. Our apartment was a physical record of that time. I had painted every wall myself in a shade called agreeable gray that Jasmine picked out, and I had joked that it was the perfect description for our relationship. She had rolled her eyes, then kissed me and said, "You are ridiculous, Malcolm, but you are my ridiculous." We had assembled the big bookcase from the furniture store together on a Sunday afternoon, both of us surrounded by boards, screws, and incomprehensible diagrams. Jasmine sat cross-legged on the floor, reading the instructions with growing frustration while I wrestled with the hardware, trying to make sense of the little drawings. At one point, she had thrown the instruction booklet aside and said, "This shelf is a metaphor for us. Complicated, confusing, and probably going to collapse." I had laughed and said, "It will hold, just like we will." And when we finally got it upright, crooked but standing, we collapsed on the floor together, laughing until our sides hurt. On that shelf sat a small framed photo of us on a beach in Florida during our first real vacation together. Jasmine's head rested on my shoulder, my arm was wrapped around her, and both of us were squinting into the bright sunlight. I remembered how she had complained that the sand kept getting in her sandals, then ran into the water anyway, splashing me until we were both soaked. The picture looked like happiness. At the time, it felt exactly like happiness, simple and solid and real, the kind of moment you think you will be able to return to whenever life gets hard. I was the stable one. I knew that. And Jasmine knew it too. My job as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company in downtown Chicago was predictable. My salary was reliable. I did not love it, but it allowed me to sleep at night and to plan for the future. It also allowed Jasmine the freedom to pursue her passion for freelance graphic design. When her clients were slow to pay, I covered her half of the rent without hesitation. When she needed a new tablet for her work, I put on my credit card. I never kept score, because in my mind that was what you did when you were a team. You were the safety net for each other's dreams. Just a month before everything imploded, I had been accepted into the Master of Business Administration program at a respected university in the city, something I had wanted for years, but had never quite believed I would manage. I remembered the moment the email arrived. My heart had pounded as I read the words of acceptance, already doing silent calculations about tuition, class schedules, and how it would affect our life. I had practically run into the living room where Jasmine was sketching at her tablet and said, "Jazz, look," holding out my phone with shaking hands. She had taken the phone, scanned the email, and then smiled, warm and proud. She pressed a kiss to my cheek and said, "That is amazing, Malcolm. You really did it." For a few seconds, I had floated on that approval. Then her smile had dimmed just slightly, so subtly that I might have missed it if I had not been looking directly at her. "But is now the right time," she had added. "Things are still shaky with my clients. Maybe we should wait a year, build up our savings a little more. We have plenty of time." She had said, "we," like it was a promise, and I had let her words settle over my excitement like a thin, damp blanket. I had nodded, telling myself she was being practical, that she was thinking about us, about our shared future. I had closed the laptop, mentally placing the dream of that degree on a high shelf. "You were probably right," I had said. "We can wait." She had relaxed, leaning against me, and at the time it had felt like a mature decision made by two responsible adults. Now, looking back, I could see the pattern etched in every moment like faint lines under a painting. The subtle ways my ambitions bent around her comfort, the quiet way my dreams deferred themselves in the name of patience. The signs were probably there in other places too. In the way Jasmine had started sighing whenever I talked about my closest friends from college, calling them boring because they preferred game nights and quiet dinners to crowded club scenes. In the way she rolled her eyes at my Sunday meal prep routine, with neatly labeled containers in the refrigerator, joking that I was predictable enough to set a clock by. At first I thought she meant it playfully. Over time, there was a sharp edge in her voice that I could not quite ignore, but I pushed the discomfort aside because love is a powerful blindfold. Her late work drinks became more frequent. What had been a once-in-a-while celebration turned into a regular fixture several nights a week. She would text that her team was going out after a big client meeting, that she needed to network, that it was good for her career. She would come home buzzing with a mix of alcohol and adrenaline, full of stories about colleagues I had never met. How clever Nicole was, how Calvin had everyone laughing, how her manager had praised her in front of the whole group. She would talk about inside jokes from the office I did not understand, and I would listen, smile, and say I was proud of her. I believed we were still moving forward together, even if our paths looked different. The afternoon everything changed. I was finishing a project brief at my office when my phone buzzed. Jasmine's message lit up the screen. "Big project win. Drinks at the Overlook on 5th. The whole team is going. You should come. I want to show you off." She added a little heart at the end. I stared at the message, feeling a warm flush of pleasure in my chest. She did not always invite me to work events. Sometimes I got the sense she thought I did not fit the image she wanted of the firm, with its creative energy and carefully curated chaos. But today was different. Today she wanted me there. That morning, she had stood in front of the bathroom mirror while I tied her black silk tie for her. Jasmine had never quite mastered a clean knot, so it had become an intimate part of our routine on her big presentation days. My hands rested lightly on her shoulders as I worked, our eyes meeting in the reflection. "You were going to knock them out tonight," I had told her. She had smiled, smoothing her blazer and replying, "We are a good team, you and I." Remembering that now, I felt as if someone had taken that warm memory and shattered it into glass inside my chest. I got caught up finishing the brief and arrived at the Overlook on 5th later than I had planned. The rooftop bar in downtown Chicago was all sharp edges and soft lighting, with a broad view of the city's skyline beginning to glitter in the early evening. The place pulsed with low music and the relaxed, relieved laughter of people who had survived another week at demanding jobs. The scent of citrus and expensive perfume hung in the air. I scanned the crowd and spotted Jasmine almost immediately. She stood near the railing, the center of a little solar system of coworkers. There were 5 or 6 of them, all in sharp blazers and fashionable shoes, holding elaborate cocktails in delicate glasses. Jasmine's laugh cut through the noise, familiar yet somehow distant. She looked radiant, her hands moving animatedly as she told a story, curls pulled into a sleek style that made her cheekbones look even sharper. A swell of pride rose in me. That is my partner, I thought. I started to weave through the crowd with a smile already forming, ready to wrap an arm around her waist and let her introduce me. Just as I approached, a group of people stepped between us. I found myself diverted onto a slightly raised platform behind a large potted plant, one of those tall decorative palms bars like to use to make spaces feel exclusive. From that angle, I ended up about 3 feet behind Jasmine's group, completely hidden from their view, but close enough that their voices were clear, as if I were listening through a pair of high-end headphones. I opened my mouth to call her name. Then I heard Nicole speak. "So, Jasmine, be honest," Nicole said, her voice teasing but eager. "Are you in, what is his name again? Malcolm? Getting serious?" 3 years is a long time. The question floated in the air, light and reasonable, like something any friend would ask. I waited for Jasmine's easy confirmation, for her to say something like, "Of course we are serious. We live together." Instead, I watched her take a slow sip of her sparkling drink, a small smirk curving her lips in a way I did not recognize. "Serious," she repeated, letting out a light laugh that carried no warmth at all. "God, no. I mean, he is nice. He is comfortable. But serious? Please." The air left my lungs. It was not a metaphor. I actually felt my chest tighten, as if someone had punched me. My hand, which had been reaching forward a moment ago, froze in midair before I slowly let it drop to my side. A man in a crisp blue shirt, Calvin, I realized from stories she had told, leaned against the railing and said, "So what is the deal then? You two live together, right? That sounds serious to me." Jasmine shrugged, shifting her weight, her body language loose and confident. She lowered her voice, but the words carried clearly to where I stood. "The deal is," Jasmine said, "I am basically single. He is just convenient for now." She sounded like she was explaining a clever life hack she had discovered. "You know how it is. He pays half the rent on a fantastic apartment. He fixes things when they break. He is a warm body to come home to who does not expect much. But that is it. It is a placeholder situation." She leaned closer to her audience, her profile lit by the soft bar lights, a smug smile flickering over her features. "I'm definitely keeping my options wide open. Have you seen Dante from accounting? Now that is potential. He has a motorcycle. Malcolm would probably have a panic attack on a motorcycle." They all laughed, a sound that suddenly felt like glass shattering in my ears. Nicole snorted and said, "You are terrible," in a voice that held more admiration than judgment. Calvin shook his head, grinning. Somebody else added, "You deserve some excitement," and Jasmine nodded as if that proved something. Standing there behind the plant, I realized that in this version of the story, I was not the partner she relied on and loved. I was a convenient prop, a supporting character in a performance where she was the star. "So you are really not planning to marry him?" Nicole asked, leaning in, her eyes bright with curiosity. Jasmine rolled her eyes, swirling the ice in her glass. "Absolutely not," she said. "I'm not about to tie myself down to someone that predictable. I'm basically single until someone comes along who actually fits me. In the meantime, Malcolm is useful." The word useful landed like a stone in my stomach. I had never felt so completely erased while still standing in the same room as the person erasing me. I stood there, surrounded by the hum of conversation and clinking glasses, and felt the world narrow down to a sharp, cold point. Convenient. Useful. Placeholder. It was not just that she was saying these things. It was how effortlessly she did it, how easily she converted our shared life into a witty anecdote for her colleagues. My memories of her kisses, our late-night talks, our plans for the future collided violently with the reality of her words, and something inside me finally stopped trying to reconcile them. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably a message from her asking where I was, completely unaware that I was close enough to see the exact angle of her smirk. I did not look at it. After a moment that stretched like a thin wire in my chest, I turned away. I did not step forward to confront her. I did not demand an explanation or ask if she meant it. I did not cause a scene. I simply walked out of the bar, my footsteps steady, my mind suddenly, brutally clear. The drive back to our apartment on the near north side was a study in silence. Not the peaceful kind that comes when you are content, but a heavy, ringing quiet, like the moment after an explosion when you are waiting for debris to fall. The city lights blurred at the edges of my vision, not from tears but from the sharp focus of my thoughts. My hand stayed steady on the steering wheel. My breathing stayed even. The frantic, shattered panic I might have expected never came. Instead, there was a cold, precise calm, as if some emergency system in my brain had taken over. When I walked into the apartment, the familiar scent of Jasmine's jasmine-scented candle wrapped around me. The cozy clutter that had once felt warm, throw pillows on the sofa, art prints she had picked out, the shoes she always left kicked off near the door, suddenly looked like a stage set. I did not sit on the couch. I did not pour a drink. I did not stand in the middle of the living room waiting for the pain to hit. I went straight to the storage closet at the end of the hallway, moving with a sense of purpose that felt both strange and undeniably right. I pulled out my 2 large suitcases and the flattened cardboard boxes I had saved from a previous move just in case. I carried them to the bedroom and opened the closet. The division was clear. Jasmine's side was crowded with color and texture. Dresses, blouses, scarves, bright skirts. My side was neat and subdued. Button-down shirts in blues and whites, a row of sweaters, 2 suits, a couple of pairs of jeans. I started with the shirts, sliding them off the hangers one by one. I did not yank them down or throw them into the suitcase. I folded each one carefully, the way my mother taught me when I left for college, smoothing the fabric before setting it in place. Every item I packed was another layer of insulation between me and the life I was leaving. My favorite navy sweater, the one Jasmine used to steal on cold nights, my well-worn pair of sneakers, the baseball cap from a game we had gone to on a sunny afternoon. I handled each object briefly, acknowledging the memory attached to it without allowing myself to linger there. I was not interested in reliving the story. I was editing it, cutting out my part from a script that no longer made sense. From a bathroom, I took my toothbrush from the holder where it stood beside hers, my razor from its spot on the shelf, and the half-used bottle of cologne she had given me for my birthday. "I love how this smells on you," she had said when she first sprayed it on my wrist. I dropped it into the toiletry bag anyway. I left the towel with the gray stripe that we had jokingly debated about, each of us insisting it belonged to the other. The debate no longer mattered. In the living room, I stood before the bookcase we had wrestled into existence together. I reached for my books, the project management text from college, my worn copies of my favorite science fiction novels, the hardcover Jasmine had bought me when I had a terrible week at work. I packed them, leaving behind her design anthologies and pop psychology paperbacks. My eyes landed on the framed beach photo. Our smiling, sunstruck faces seemed to belong to strangers. I did not smash the frame or rip the photo. I simply turned it face down on the shelf. That memory belonged to her now, not to me. In the small hallway closet, I took my coat, my umbrella, my running shoes. I left the coat she always borrowed and never hung properly. In the kitchen, I grabbed my favorite coffee mug and the travel tumbler I used every morning. I opened a drawer with our collection of takeout menus and old receipts, glanced at the chaos of paper, and closed it again. None of that was mine in any way that mattered. It was all part of her world now, the stage where she had delivered that casual demolition of our relationship. It took about 2 hours, though it felt outside of time. I moved steadily from room to room, packing only what was clearly mine. When I finished, the apartment looked lopsided. The empty spaces where my presence had been were visible. Bare hooks in the closet, a gap on the bathroom shelf, an emptier row on the bookcase. It was like looking at the negative of a photograph, the outline of a life that had been carefully removed. I sat at the small dining table where Jasmine and I had shared countless meals and late-night conversations. We had planned imaginary vacations there, argued about money in low, tired voices, and laughed over burned lasagna. I pulled out a piece of the nice stationery we kept for thank you notes. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I considered writing out my feelings, listing every hurt, every disappointment, every moment that now looked different under the light of her words at the bar. But that would have turned this into a conversation, and I was finished having conversations she did not respect. Instead, I wrote 3 short lines. "Jasmine, you're not basically single anymore. You just are. Malcolm." I read the words over once. They were not a threat or a plea. They were simply a statement of the new reality she herself had declared. I folded the paper in half and propped it against the empty fruit bowl in the center of the table. She had once promised to keep that bowl filled with fresh fruit, part of a plan to eat healthier. At that moment, it held only a single withering lemon and a light dusting of crumbs. I did one last walkthrough of the apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, living room. I scanned each space, checking for anything that truly belonged to me. I felt no tug of attachment, no sudden urge to stay just a little longer. There was only the quiet certainty that leaving was the only honest thing I could do. I set my key on the counter next to the note and listened to the soft click it made. It sounded final in a way I could not quite explain. I pulled my suitcases behind me down the hallway, the wheels whispering over the worn carpet. I did not look back at the door when it closed. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. Same face, same clothes, but a different expression. Not devastation, not rage. Just a strange, still emptiness. Outside, the night air felt colder than it had an hour earlier. I loaded my bags into the trunk of my car and drove to a hotel not far from downtown, a place I picked for no reason other than that it had vacancies and was close enough to my office for the next morning. The hotel room was a blank slate. Beige walls, a generic painting of an abstract landscape, neutral carpet, the faint smell of industrial cleaner. It was perfect. There were no memories here, no echoes of Jasmine's laughter, no physical evidence of the life I had just stepped out of. I dropped my suitcases by the door. The sound of them hitting the floor echoed in the quiet room. I did not turn on the television. I just sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the firm mattress resist my weight, and let the silence soak into me. The cold clarity that had carried me through the evening remained. There was no collapsing onto the floor, no screaming into a pillow, no dramatic breakdown. It was as if the part of my mind that processed emotional pain had shut down to protect the rest of me. In its place was a wide, empty space. It was not peaceful, but it was quiet. After hearing Jasmine reduce me to a convenient placeholder, quiet felt like a small victory. I took my phone out of my pocket, turned it completely off, and placed it face down on the nightstand. For the first time in 3 years, she had no way to reach me. For the next 2 days, I existed in that bubble. I ordered overpriced room service that I barely tasted. I stood at the window at night, watching the river of headlights on the expressway flow past far below. I slept long, dreamless stretches, waking up only when my body insisted. I did not check social media, did not open my email, did not let my mind wander back to the rooftop bar or to the apartment I had left behind. Whenever a memory tried to surface, I imagined placing it in a box and shoving it onto a high shelf out of reach. The unfairness of it all became a fact rather than a feeling. She had used me. I had believed in her. Now it was over. There was no argument I could make that would change what she had revealed about how she truly saw me. On the third morning, with a dull sense of obligation, I turned my phone back on. It felt like opening a door to a storm I knew had been building outside. The notifications exploded across the screen in a relentless cascade. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages. The first wave came from Jasmine. I opened the voicemail list and tapped on the earliest one, recorded later that same night. Her voice came through the speaker, a little sharp. "Malcolm, where are you? Did you get stuck at work? My key is not working, and this is not funny. Call me when you get this." There was annoyance there, but no real worry. To her, my absence was an inconvenience, not a sign that anything fundamental had changed. I listened to the next message, recorded later. Her tone was tighter. "Okay, seriously, what is going on? Your stuff is gone. What does this note mean? You just are you having some kind of breakdown? Call me right now." I could almost picture her standing in the middle of the apartment, seeing the empty spaces where my things had been, her confusion turning to offense instead of self-reflection. I listened to each voicemail in order, hearing her annoyance give way to confusion, then irritation, then something edging toward panic. The text messages told a similar story in written form. The first ones asked where I was, demanded that I explain myself. When I remained silent, the tone shifted. "Is this about what I said at the bar?" she wrote. "You were there? That was just work talk, Malcolm." I was blowing off steam. "You cannot take everything so literally. You are overreacting." Reading those words, I felt a detached sort of fascination. She was trying to reframe what she had said in front of her coworkers as a harmless joke, and my reaction as the real problem. I did not respond. I did not block her either. I simply let the messages stack up like sediment, layer after layer of her perspective that I had finally learned I did not have to accept. It was the first sign of a shift in power that I had never even realized existed between us. For years, she had been the one deciding when we talked, how we framed arguments, whether an issue mattered or not. Now she was shouting into a void, and I was the one holding the choice to answer or stay quiet. I chose silence. After about a week, the tone of her messages changed again. The anger and dismissal started to crack, and apologies began to slip through. "Malcolm, please. I am sorry. I was stupid. I was trying to make them laugh. They were pressuring me, and I said something awful. You know me. You know I love you. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Please do not throw this away." It was the first time I had ever seen the words, "I love you," from her feel like an accusation instead of a comfort. They read more like a bargaining chip than a genuine confession. Then a new name appeared on my screen. Tiffany, one of Jasmine's closest friends, the one who had always made me feel like a piece of furniture that came with a Jasmine package. I did not answer her call. I let it go to voicemail and listened later, sprawled on the hotel bed with the curtains half open. "Malcolm, it is Tiffany," she said, with a sigh that already sounded annoyed. "Look, I know things ended badly with you and Jasmine, but you need to be the bigger person here. She is a mess. She cannot stop crying. She cannot afford the apartment by herself, and her mother is giving her a hard time. People at work found out what happened, and they are judging her. She needs you. This cold shoulder thing is not fair. Call her." I listened to the entire message without feeling even a tremor of guilt. Be the bigger person had become a familiar phrase in my life, always used to nudge me into bending one more time, forgiving one more slight, absorbing one more hurt. I deleted the voicemail. Jasmine's tears, her financial stress, her embarrassment at work, none of that was mine to fix anymore. They were the direct consequences of her own words, spoken freely when she thought I was not listening. Over the next few weeks, Jasmine's text messages swung wildly between desperation and venom. "I cannot believe you are doing this," she wrote one day. "You are throwing away 3 years because you overheard one conversation I did not even mean. You are being cruel." On another day, "I had to move back in with my mom. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" She keeps asking what happened. I do not know what to tell her. "Are you happy now?" Then, later still, "You are a coward, Malcolm. A cold, heartless robot. No wonder I sometimes felt single. You were never really there emotionally." I read that last message while sitting on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. The place was a sleek one-bedroom on the edge of downtown, with tall windows and a view of the river. I had chosen it for myself alone, with no thought about whether Jasmine would like the kitchen or the closet space. I did not delete that message right away. I saved it as a kind of artifact, a perfect encapsulation of how she had turned herself into the victim of her own choices and me into the villain for simply accepting what she had said. My new life took shape gradually. I spent a weekend assembling furniture that suited my taste instead of ours, filling the space with colors and textures I liked. I put up shelves and arranged my books without wondering if Jasmine would think the layout looked balanced. I cooked simple meals for one and realized it felt strangely peaceful to eat alone at a small table by the window, the city glowing softly outside. I bought a plant and took careful care of it, joking to myself that if it died, at least it would not accuse me of being too predictable. At work, changes were happening too. When my manager announced that he was moving into a different role, the company decided to restructure our department. After a series of meetings and evaluations, I was offered a promotion to lead a new project team. The raise that came with it was significant enough to make the idea of the Master of Business Administration program reappear in my mind, less as a fantasy and more as a genuine possibility. This time, when I thought about the commitment and the cost, I did not see Jasmine's frown or hear her cautious voice. I heard only my own. One of my coworkers, Lionel, owned a small sailboat moored at a marina on Lake Michigan. He had mentioned it in passing once, and I had admitted I had never been on a sailboat. A few weeks after my move, he stopped by my desk and said, "I am taking the boat out this weekend. The weather is supposed to be good. You should come. It will be good to get out on the water." Normally, I might have hesitated, thinking of Jasmine's likely reaction or our shared plans. Instead, I heard myself say, "Yes, I would like that." On the lake, with the skyline spread behind us like a careful drawing, I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time since that night at the bar. The wind pushed against the sails, the boat cut through the water, and the air smelled clean and sharp. Lionel showed me how to handle the lines, how to read the wind, how to lean with the motion of the boat instead of fighting it. "You get used to trusting the boat," he said. "You stop trying to control every little thing." I listened, feeling the words settle into me in a way that had nothing to do with sailing and everything to do with my life. The new coffee shop near my office became my morning sanctuary. It had exposed brick walls, tall windows, and tables made from reclaimed wood that still bore faint traces of old paint. The air smelled of freshly ground beans and buttery pastries. A low hum of conversation and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine created a kind of gentle background music. Students, freelancers, and office workers alike spread out with laptops and notebooks, creation and routine sharing the same space without competing. Most mornings, I arrived just after they opened. I ordered a latte and sometimes a breakfast sandwich, then settled at a small table near the window with my laptop. I reviewed project plans for my new team, answered early emails, and sometimes, when my mind wandered, opened a browser tab to research the Master of Business Administration program again. This time, when I calculated tuition and schedules, I asked only one question. Was I ready? I did not weigh Jasmine's needs or her comfort. It was a quiet but profound shift. One bright morning, a few months after I left the apartment, I was sitting in my usual spot, scrolling through photos on my phone from another sailing trip with Lionel. In one picture, the water was deep blue, the sky impossibly clear, and I was standing at the bow of the boat, squinting into the wind with a small, surprised smile. I barely recognized myself in that image, not because my face looked different, but because I could see how light my posture seemed, how unburdened. I felt it before I saw her, that subtle disturbance when someone walks into the orbit of your personal space. I looked up, and there she was. Jasmine stood a step away from my table, hands clenched around the strap of her bag. She looked smaller somehow, not in height, but in presence. Her usually sharp, polished outfits had been replaced by a rumpled blouse and slacks that did not quite fit right. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and the absence of makeup made her features seem both younger and more worn at the same time. "Malcolm," she said. Her voice was soft, a little hoarse. My name sounded unfamiliar on her tongue now. I felt the familiar urge to stand, to pull out a chair for her, to smooth the awkwardness, but the urge passed like a wave that did not quite reach shore. "Jasmine," I replied, my tone as neutral as if I were greeting a delivery driver who had brought a package. No anger, no warmth, just a simple acknowledgement. She glanced at the empty chair across from me. "Can I sit?" she asked, her fingers tightening around her bag strap. There was a tremor in her voice I had never heard before. For a moment, I considered telling her no, that there was nothing left to say, but I realized I did not actually need to defend myself from her anymore. I gave a small nod. "Sure." She pulled out the chair and sat down slowly, as if afraid it might vanish beneath her. For a few seconds, we simply looked at each other. She studied my face, as if searching for some sign of the man who used to make her coffee every morning, who used to laugh at her stories and hold her when she cried over a difficult client. I studied her in return, noting the faint shadows under her eyes and the way her shoulders drooped. The vibrant energy she used to carry into every room was gone, replaced by a nervous, brittle stillness. "I have been trying to reach you for months," Jasmine began, her hands twisting together on the table. "You never answer. You never call back. You did not even send one message. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "I know you've been trying," I said. "I saw the messages." My calm tone seemed to throw her off balance. It did not match the script she had prepared in her mind. "I had to move back in with my mother," she continued, her words tumbling out faster now. "She lives all the way over on the west side again, and the apartment is cramped. She lectures me every day about responsibility and commitment. She keeps asking what happened, and I do not even know how to explain it. I just hear her voice in my head saying she was right about me, and I cannot stand it." She looked at me, eyes shiny, clearly waiting for me to jump in with sympathy, the way I would have before. I set my coffee cup down carefully. "That sounds difficult," I said quietly. It was the truth. Living with constant criticism would be hard for anyone. But I did not add, "Let me help," or "We will figure it out." Those words no longer belonged to her for me. Jasmine blinked, taken aback by the distance in my response. "Work has been awful too," she went on, swallowing hard. "People know. Not everything, but enough. Somebody heard me at the bar that night, and it spread. They look at me differently now. That senior designer promotion I was supposed to get, they gave it to Rochelle." Her voice rose slightly on the last sentence, outraged. "Can you believe that? After everything I did for that company?" "Yes," I said simply. Jasmine flinched as if I had hit her. "What is that supposed to mean?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. I met her gaze. It means your actions had consequences, I replied. You presented yourself, in a very public setting, as someone who uses people for convenience. Companies tend to prefer leaders who demonstrate loyalty and integrity. It is not complicated. She stared at me, stunned. You sound so cold, she whispered. A tear broke free and slid down her cheek, leaving a faint track. I'm just being realistic, I answered. Reality is not always warm. She took a shuddering breath. I lost everything, Malcolm, she said, her voice cracking. My home, my reputation, all of it. And it all fell apart because of one stupid comment I did not even mean. No, I said, my voice still level, as steady as a stone in a stream. You did not lose everything because of one comment. You lost it because that comment revealed the truth about how you saw me and what our relationship really was to you. Everyone else just happened to hear it that time. I heard it too, and I believed you. That is the difference. I did not mean it, Jasmine insisted, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. I was nervous. They were all looking at me, and I wanted to fit in. I was showing off. You know how people talk at work events. It was a joke, a bad one, and you're throwing away 3 years over that? Over a moment when I was being stupid and trying to impress people who do not even matter. I shook my head. It was never a joke to me, I said. Those 3 years mattered to me. I treated them like something real. That is why when you honestly described me as convenient and yourself as basically single, I took you at your word. I did not throw anything away, Jasmine. I simply stopped pretending we had something we did not. I started living in the reality you chose. She clenched her jaw, anger blazing through the tears. So that is it? She asked, her voice rising. A few people at nearby tables glanced our way. After all the good times we had, after everything we went through together, you're just going to sit there and watch me drown? You are not even going to reach out a hand. Do you really not feel anything at all? That question cut closer than her insults. It was the last thread tying us together. The idea that somewhere under my calm, I still ached for her. I looked at her for a long moment, searching my own reactions as much as her expression. I remembered the early mornings, the beach in Florida, the bookshelf, the jasmine candle burning in the corner of the living room. I remembered the night at the bar, the taste of cold clarity in my mouth as I listened. And I realized, with a faint sense of surprise, that the storm inside me had passed already. There was no rage, no longing. There was only a quiet, vast space where my feelings for her used to sit. I'm not watching you drown, Jasmine, I said, lowering my voice until she had to lean in to hear me. I'm not watching you at all. I stopped watching you the night I walked out of that apartment. Your life, your struggles, your consequences, they are not connected to me anymore. I have my own life to live. You should try living yours, instead of trying to drag me back into it. She stared at me, her face crumpling, then hardening, then crumpling again as different emotions fought each other. For a second, I saw the woman I had fallen for at that barbecue, laughing over a ruined burger. Then that image slid away, replaced by the person who had called me convenient to get a laugh at a rooftop bar. I never thought you could be this cold, she whispered. Maybe I did not know you at all. Maybe you knew the version of me that revolved around you. I replied. I stood and slid my laptop into my bag, slinging the strap over my shoulder. My hands did not shake. My heart did not race. People change when they stop pretending that being used is the same thing as being loved. Jasmine pressed her lips together, a fresh tear rolling down. She did not wipe it away this time. I looked at her one last time. There was no dramatic montage in my head, no rush of memories. Just a simple, quiet recognition. This chapter of my life was over. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. I'm in it. I truly did. But I also knew, with absolute certainty, that what she was looking for, a convenient placeholder who would make coffee and pay bills while she chased someone more exciting, would never be me again. I turned and walked toward the door. The small bell above it chimed softly as I stepped out into the bright Chicago morning. The sunlight felt warm on my face, not in a poetic, transformative way, but in a real, physical way that grounded me in the moment. Cars moved along the street. People hurried past with phones pressed to their ears and bags slung over their shoulders, each of them wrapped in their own stories. I stood there for a second, breathing in the air that tasted faintly of exhaust and roasting coffee beans from the shop behind me. Then I started walking toward my office, my bag bumping lightly against my hip. My mind drifted to the next sailing trip Lionel had invited me on, to the application for the Master of Business Administration program that sat half-finished on my desk, to the plan in my apartment that had somehow survived my inconsistent watering. My future no longer felt like something I had to negotiate with anyone else. It was a wide, open stretch of water, unknown but navigable. For the first time, I understood that I did not need someone else to be the captain of my life. I already was. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.